The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. Picture this. You're 29 years old and you've just poured your heart and soul into building something extraordinary. You're working at Netscape, one of the hottest companies on the planet, and your team has just achieved the impossible, growing a business from zero to over $400 million a year. Life is good, really good. Then everything falls apart in the most spectacular way possible. Your co-founder, a 22-year-old genius who just graced the cover of Time magazine, sitting barefoot on a throne like some kind of tech royalty, has just leaked your entire secret strategy to the press. 2 weeks before you were supposed to launch it. 2 weeks. You're furious. You fire off a terse email. I guess we're not going to wait until the 5th to launch the strategy. 15 minutes later, your inbox pings. It's his response. But here's the kicker. He's copied the CEO and the chairman of the board. The email burns into your screen. Apparently you do not understand how serious the situation is. We are getting killed out there. As a result, we've lost over $3 billion in market capitalization. We are now in danger of losing the entire company, and it's all your fault. Next time, do the interview yourself. Fuck you, Mark. You drive home that night with your heart in your throat. You've got a wife and 3 young kids depending on you. When you show her the email and that magazine cover, she looks at you with genuine worry in her eyes and says, "You need to start looking for a job. Right away." So what do when your dream job transforms into a waking nightmare? When the person you admired publicly throws you under the bus in front of everyone who matters? Most business books are like cheerful cooking shows, giving you perfect recipes for success. They tell you how to dream big, hire amazing people, and craft the perfect plan. But what happens when you miss your targets? What happens when those amazing people start acting entitled? What happens when your beautiful plan explodes and you're staring into the void? Welcome to Ben Horowitz's masterpiece, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. This isn't some polished fairy tale about business success. It's a raw, unfiltered story, forged in the fires of near bankruptcy, soul-crushing layoffs, and impossible decisions where every option feels wrong. That guy who got the brutal email, that's Ben Horowitz, and he went on to become one of Silicon Valley's most respected entrepreneurs and investors. Today, we're going to walk through his incredible journey, from the dizzying heights of the dot-com boom to the crushing depths of the crash that followed. We'll discover the brutal, unglamorous, and often terrifying lessons he learned when there were no good answers, only less bad ones. By the end, you'll understand the one skill that separates great leaders from everyone else, the ability to make the best move when there are no good moves left on the board. You'll learn why embracing what he calls the struggle is the only real path to greatness. This isn't just about business. It's about navigating the messy, complicated, and hard parts of being human. Our story begins in a time that seems almost mythical now, the late 1990s. The internet was a rocket ship, and Silicon Valley was mission control. Money was flowing like champagne at a wedding, and it felt like anyone with a halfway decent idea could become a millionaire before breakfast. This was the golden age that gave birth to LoudCloud. Ben Horowitz, along with his now famous co-founder Mark Andreessen from Netscape, plus 2 other brilliant minds, Tim Howes and In-Sik Rhee, had a vision that was genuinely ahead of its time. They noticed companies were struggling to build websites and applications that could handle millions of users. The technical complexity was crushing businesses before they could even get started. So they thought, what if we built a computing cloud that handled all that complexity for them? The term cloud, as we casually use it today. That largely came from their company LoudCloud. Coming off the legendary success of Netscape, raising money was almost comically easy. Their first venture capital investor, Andy Rachleff, gave Ben a piece of advice that perfectly captured the insanity of the era. He said, "Ben, think about how you might run the business if capital were free." It was a dangerous question. Like asking someone, "What would you eat if ice cream had the same nutritional value as broccoli?" And Ben didn't just take the bait. He swallowed it whole. LoudCloud hired hundreds of the smartest people in Silicon Valley in just a few months. They built massive infrastructure, signed up customers at breakneck speed, and landed on the cover of Wired magazine. They were building, it seemed, the greatest business of all time. Then, in March of 2000, the music stopped. Abruptly, the great dot-com crash began. The Nasdaq, which had doubled in a single year, collapsed like a house of cards, wiping out nearly 80% of its value. Companies that were once celebrated as the future of civilization were now mockingly called dot bombs and disappeared overnight. Suddenly, LoudCloud, with its hundreds of employees and massive expenses, was in a desperate race for survival. Most of their customers were other dot-coms, and they were going bankrupt at an alarming rate. They needed to raise more money, but the world had fundamentally changed. Investors were terrified. Ben pitched his company to one firm, and afterward, his friend and board member, the legendary coach Bill Campbell, called him with some brutally honest feedback. "Ben," Bill said in his gravelly voice, "well, honestly, they thought you were smoking crack." This is where the real story begins. This is where Ben Horowitz entered what he calls the struggle. The struggle, as he describes it, isn't a single event or crisis. It's a state of being. The struggle is when you wonder why you started the company in the first place. It's when food loses its taste. It's when you're surrounded by people but feel completely, utterly alone. The struggle is when self-doubt transforms into self-hatred. It's where your insides churn so violently you feel like you might actually spit blood. Every great entrepreneur, from Steve Jobs to Mark Zuckerberg, has been through it. But, as Ben warns with chilling honesty, that doesn't mean you'll make it out alive. The struggle has no mercy. The struggle is also where greatness comes from. With no private investors willing to touch them, LoudCloud was left with one single terrifying option: go public. In the middle of the worst stock market crash for technology companies in history, Ben made a list of all the reasons it was a terrible idea. Their sales were impossible to forecast. Their customers were going bankrupt left and right. They were losing a ton of money. They were, in his own words, not ready to be public. He presented this honest assessment to his board. After a long, uncomfortable silence, Bill Campbell broke the tension. "Ben," he said, "it's not the money." A wave of relief washed over Ben. Maybe there was another way out of this nightmare. Then Bill spoke again. "It's the fucking money." They were going public. What followed was what one magazine called the IPO from hell. The press absolutely tore them apart. A Wall Street Journal cover story quoted a money manager saying, "Wow, they were desperate." Just before the IPO roadshow, where they would pitch the company to big investors across the country, Ben had to hold an all-company meeting. He delivered two pieces of news. First, they were trying to go public. Second, because the company's value had fallen so catastrophically, they had to do a quote-quote stock split, which effectively cut the number of shares each employee had in half. He had just cut their dreams in half. The employees were furious. His own mother-in-law, who happened to be at the meeting, turned to his wife and asked in bewilderment, "Why does everybody hate Ben so much?" The roadshow was absolutely brutal. The market crashed daily. Investors looked like shell-shocked soldiers coming out of battle. Ben didn't sleep for more than 2 hours total during the entire 3-week ordeal. Then, right in the middle of it all, he got a call from his father-in-law. His wife Felicia had suffered a severe allergic reaction to medication and had stopped breathing. "She is not going to die," his father-in-law assured him, but Ben was devastated. He had been so completely focused on saving the company that he had lost sight of the only thing that truly mattered. He called Felicia immediately. "If you need me," he said, his voice breaking, "I will come home right now." Her response was unwavering. "No. Get the IPO done. There is no tomorrow for you and the company. I'll be fine." He stumbled through the rest of the roadshow in a complete daze. On the day before the offering, Yahoo, the biggest star of the internet boom, announced its CEO was stepping down. It felt like the universe was conspiring against them. They managed to sell the stock at $6 a share, far below their initial hopes, but they raised just enough money to survive. But there was no celebration. No champagne. The investment banks didn't even offer them the traditional closing dinner. On the plane ride home, his director of finance summed it up perfectly. "Yeah, we did it, but we're still screwed." He was right. Surviving the IPO wasn't the end of the struggle. It was just the beginning of a brutal new chapter. This experience taught Ben one of his most profound lessons. The most difficult skill for a CEO isn't strategy or finance or marketing. It's managing your own psychology. The pressure is absolutely immense. You're responsible for other people's money, for your employees, mortgages, and kids, college funds. Things are constantly going wrong, and as the CEO, it is always your fault. If a great engineer quits, that's your fault. If the product has too many bugs, that's your fault. If you miss the quarterly target, that's your fault. As he puts it, if you're a CEO, getting a 22 out of 100 on the test is a normal day. For someone who got straight A's their whole life, that feeling can be absolutely crushing. Faced with this relentless pressure, CEOs often make one of two fatal mistakes. Either they take everything too personally and end up terrorizing their team, or they don't take things personally enough, becoming unrealistically optimistic and ignoring real problems. The secret, Ben learned through painful trial and error, is to be urgent but not insane. To separate the importance of the issue from how you feel about it emotionally. It's also a profoundly lonely job. You can't share your deepest fears with your employees because it would panic them. And you can't always get useful advice from your board because the knowledge gap between you and them is just too vast. You are all alone at the top. So how do you cope with this isolation? Ben offers a few hard-won techniques. First, make friends with other CEOs, people who have actually been through similar battles. You don't need them to solve your problem for you, but just talking to someone who truly understands can be a lifeline. Second, get it out of your head and onto paper. Writing down your logic separates you from the swirling emotion and creates clarity. And third, perhaps most importantly, focus on the road, not the wall. When you're driving a race car at 200 miles per hour, if you stare at the wall, you will drive straight into it. If you focus on the road ahead, you will follow the road. As a CEO, there are 1,000 things that can go catastrophically wrong. If you obsess over them, you will crash the company. Focus on where you're going, not what you desperately hope to avoid. And above all, he says, the great CEOs all have one thing in common. When asked how they survived and succeeded, they all say the same thing: I didn't quit. This refusal to quit, this complete embrace of the struggle, forced Ben Horowitz to evolve dramatically as a leader. He had been a, quote, peacetime CEO for about 3 glorious days before the dot-com crash plunged him into an 8-year war. This distinction, he realized, was absolutely critical. Peacetime, he explains, is when your company has a big lead over the competition in a growing market. In peacetime, you can focus on creativity, expansion, and building culture. Google's famous 20% time, where employees could work on their own passion projects, was a classic peacetime policy. Wartime is when you are fighting desperately for survival against an existential threat, a brutal competitor, a market collapse, or a massive technology shift. In wartime, the mission is everything. There is absolutely no room for deviation. Survival depends on precision and strict alignment. The peacetime CEO works hard to minimize conflict. The wartime CEO heightens the contradictions to force brutal clarity. The peacetime CEO strives for broad buy-in and consensus. The wartime CEO neither indulges consensus building nor tolerates disagreements. The peacetime CEO has a thoughtful contingency plan. The wartime CEO knows that sometimes you just have to roll a hard 6 and hope. Ben had to become a wartime CEO almost overnight. After the IPO, LoudCloud's business was still in deep trouble. The market was getting worse, not better. One day, their largest competitor, a company called Exodus that had been valued at $50 billion just a year earlier, filed for bankruptcy. It was a terrifying sign. If they could fail that spectacularly, anyone could. Ben knew he desperately needed a plan B. He started a secret project inside the company, codenamed Oxide. The idea was to take the powerful software they had built to run their own cloud service, called Opsware, and turn it into a product they could sell to other companies. It was a desperate Hail Mary move. When two of his business school-educated employees found out about the project, they presented him with a 45-slide PowerPoint deck on why it was a stupid, misguided idea that would drain precious resources from their core business. He listened to their entire presentation without saying a single word. When they finished, clearly proud of their analysis, he looked at them calmly and said, "Did I ask for this presentation?" This, he says, was the exact moment he fully transitioned from a peacetime CEO to a wartime CEO. He knew the company was in deep trouble. He needed data and information desperately, but he didn't need recommendations from people who didn't have the full, terrifying picture. The company would live or die by the quality of his decisions alone. Then came the final, crushing blow. Their largest customer, Atriax, which accounted for more than $1 million a month in guaranteed revenue, went bankrupt. They couldn't pay the $25 million they owed LoudCloud. The company was doomed. There was absolutely no way to raise more money in this market. The only possible path forward was to execute the secret plan, sell the entire LoudCloud services business, and completely pivot the company to become a pure software company called Opsware. This was an almost impossibly difficult thing to pull off. It meant selling all their customers, all their revenue, and laying off a huge portion of their workforce. It was a bet-the-company move born of utter desperation. He and his dealmaker, John O'Farrell, worked in complete secrecy to find a buyer. They managed to create a bidding war between two giants, IBM and EDS. To create urgency, Ben took a brilliant piece of advice from his board member Michael Ovitz, the legendary Hollywood agent. Ovitz told him, "I believe in artificial deadlines. I believe in playing one against the other. I believe in doing everything and anything short of illegal or immoral to get the deal done." The artificial deadline worked like magic. They struck a deal to sell the services business to EDS for $63.5 million in cash. They would keep the Opsware software and become a pure software company. It was an absolute miracle. They had avoided bankruptcy by the thinnest possible margin. Ben called Bill Campbell immediately to tell him the amazing news. The deal was done. They were saved. Campbell's response was immediate and sharp. He told Ben he absolutely couldn't go to New York for the big public announcement. "You need to stay home," he said firmly, "and make sure everybody knows where they stand. You can't wait a day. In fact, you can't wait a minute. They need to know whether they're working for you, EDS, or looking for a job." It was painful, but essential advice. This leads to another of Horowitz's core lessons: how to do the hardest things with genuine humanity. Layoffs are one of the most brutal parts of business, and he learned through painful experience how to do them the right way. The key, he says, is to get your own head right first. It's incredibly easy to feel like a complete failure, to internalize all the pain. He remembers reading an employee's email that said, "Ben is either lying, or stupid, or both." And in that moment he thought to himself, definitely stupid, but you absolutely have to focus on the future and the people who remain. He learned to train his managers relentlessly for this terrible task. The golden rule: managers must lay off their own people. You cannot pass this responsibility to HR. People will remember the day you laid them off for the rest of their lives. If they worked hard for you, you owe them the courage to deliver the news yourself face to face. The message, he learned from Bill Campbell, is actually for the people who are staying. They will watch very carefully how you treat their departing friends, and their trust in you will be won or lost in that critical moment. You have to be present. Don't hide in your office like a coward. Walk the floor. Talk to people directly. Help them carry their boxes to their cars if needed. Let them know you genuinely appreciate what they contributed. This same principle of direct, honest, and humane leadership applies to other impossibly hard things, like demoting a loyal friend. When the company outgrows an early, loyal employee who helped build everything, it's an absolutely heart-wrenching decision. Ben says you must be brutally honest with them. Don't sugarcoat it, or hide behind corporate speak. Acknowledge their genuine contributions. Admit your own shortcomings as a leader. Perhaps a more experienced CEO could have developed them faster. If you can, couple the demotion with a raise to show they're still valued. You can't let them keep their old job, but as Bill Campbell taught him, you can absolutely let them keep their respect and dignity. This radical honesty became a cornerstone of his entire leadership style. Early in his career, he made the classic mistake of being too positive, of trying to shield his employees from bad news. He thought he was boosting morale and keeping spirits up. But one day he was talking to his brother-in-law, a telephone lineman for AT&T, and casually asked him if he knew a senior executive named Fred. His brother-in-law replied with a laugh, "Yeah, I know Fred. He comes by about once a quarter to blow a little sunshine up my backside." In that exact moment, Ben realized his huge mistake. His team absolutely knew things weren't perfect. By only accentuating the positive and hiding problems, he wasn't inspiring them at all. He was insulting their intelligence and steadily eroding their trust. He learned that trust is the absolute foundation of all meaningful communication. As he brilliantly puts it, in any human interaction, the required amount of communication is inversely proportional to the level of trust. If I trust you completely, I need almost no explanation from you. If I don't trust you at all, no amount of explaining will ever convince me. By telling it like it actually is, you build real trust. You also get more brains actively working on the hard problems. A brain simply can't solve a problem it doesn't know exists. After selling the LoudCloud business, the company, now officially renamed Opsware, was reborn with a fresh start, but it was very far from safe. The stock price absolutely plummeted to just 35 cents a share. Investors thought they had sold the only valuable part of the company, and were now just an empty shell, waiting to burn through its remaining cash and die. He got an ominous notice from NASDAQ: get the stock price above $1 or be delisted from the exchange. Once again, Ben was deep in wartime mode. He hit the road, not to see traditional venture investors, but on the advice of a savvy friend, he went to see a legendary, old-school investment banker named Herb Allen. Ben and Mark told him their whole brutal story. They had a great team, cash still in the bank, and a $20 million a year contract from EDS. They were clearly worth more than half their cash on hand alone. Herb listened carefully to everything and said simply, "I'd like to be helpful." Over the next few months, Herb Allen and his clients steadily bought up Opsware stock, driving the price from 35 cents to over $3 a share. They were saved once again. Years later, Ben asked Herb why he invested, when literally no one else would touch them. Herb replied with a smile, "I didn't understand anything about your business or your technology. What I saw was two guys who came to visit me when every other public company CEO and chairman was hiding under their desk, terrified. Investing in courage and determination was an easy decision for me." Courage is a powerful theme that runs through the entire book. Ben believes it's the single most critical trait for a leader, far more important than intelligence or charisma. The right decision is often blindingly obvious, but the overwhelming pressure to make the easy, popular wrong decision can be crushing. Courage, he says, is exactly like a muscle that can be developed over time. Every single time you make the hard, correct decision, you become a bit more courageous. Every time you take the easy way out and make the wrong decision, you become a bit more cowardly. And as CEO, those choices define the fundamental character of your entire company. Opsware's war was nowhere near over. Their biggest customer, EDS, who accounted for a staggering 90% of their revenue, was ready to cancel their entire contract. The deployment was an absolute mess. One tough EDS executive from Oklahoma screamed at Ben's team, "I think Opsware is the biggest piece of garbage I've ever seen. I'm going to do everything I can to get you guys thrown out of here." Ben's team managed to negotiate one final chance, a 60-day window to fix absolutely everything. 60 days to live. Ben told his team with complete seriousness, "This is not a scenario where an excuse will do. This is a must-win situation. Our only option is to win." They worked around the clock for weeks, but they also needed something more, something unexpected. Ben's sales lead, Anthony Wright, discovered through careful listening that the EDS executive loved a piece of software from a small company called Tangram, but his own purchasing department was about to take it away from him over budget issues. Ben had a crazy idea. He looked up Tangram. It was a public company, but it was only worth $6 million total. In a lightning-fast, completely secret move, Opsware bought the entire company, Tangram, for $10 million. He then called the EDS executive and calmly told him that the Tangram software he loved was now his, completely free, as part of his existing Opsware contract. The executive was absolutely ecstatic. His whole mood transformed instantly. Suddenly, all the incredibly hard work his team had done over 60 days looked completely different through this new lens. They had saved the account. They had saved the company once again. This is exactly what Ben means when he says the first rule of entrepreneurship is that there are no rules. When you're faced with a genuine crisis, you simply can't follow a standard playbook. Sometimes you have to do something completely crazy, something no one expects or would recommend. You have to find a winning move when there appear to be no moves left on the board. The final major battle came from a new, aggressive competitor called Blade Logic. They were starting to beat Opsware consistently in key deals. The product was genuinely losing, the stock price was falling again. The team was absolutely exhausted after years of constant warfare. Ben felt like he had no more speeches left, no more motivational talks in him. He called an all-engineering meeting and just leveled with them completely. "I have some really bad news. We are getting our tails kicked by Blade Logic, and it's fundamentally a product problem. If this continues, I am going to have to sell the company for cheap, and we'll all lose everything we've worked for. We have one bullet left in the gun, and we absolutely must hit the target." He asked every single one of them to go home and tell their families honestly, "Ben needs me for the next 6 months." The team rallied one more time. For 6 brutal months, they worked 7 days a week, morning till night, to completely rebuild the product from the ground up. And, remarkably, it worked. They started winning deals again. They went on to become the clear #1 company in their entire market. This grueling experience taught Ben that when you're facing a genuine existential threat, there are no silver bullets. There is no clever shortcut or marketing trick that will save you. As one of his old engineering partners told him bluntly, "We are going to have to use a lot of lead bullets. You have to do the hard, grinding, relentless work to actually fix the core problem." Finally, after 8 long years of constant struggle, after surviving multiple near-death experiences that would have killed most companies, Opsware was a genuine success. They were the clear market leader, with a revenue run rate approaching $150 million. Then, acquisition offers started coming in to buy the company. The board and the management team, utterly exhausted from the long war, were ready to sell and move on with their lives. After a fierce bidding war, Hewlett-Packard offered a staggering $1.65 billion in cash. Ben sold the company. But it wasn't a moment of pure joy and celebration. He was physically sick. He couldn't sleep. He cried. How could he possibly sell the thing he had spent 8 years of his life force building from nothing? And then, slowly, he realized it was actually the smartest thing he'd ever done. They had built something incredible, from absolutely nothing, watched it go back to nothing, and then rebuilt it into a massive success against impossible odds. His business life as an operator, he felt, was kind of over. But he had learned so incredibly much. And he realized that most of what he learned through brutal experience wasn't written down anywhere useful. The world of venture capital was filled with people who had never actually run a company themselves, who had never personally faced the struggle or made a payroll or fired a friend. And that's when he and Mark Andreessen decided to start a completely new kind of venture capital firm, Andreessen Horowitz, a firm built by actual founders, for founders. A firm specifically designed not to replace the founding CEO with some professional manager, but to help them learn the unnatural, difficult, and absolutely crucial skills needed to lead their company through both peacetime and wartime. The ultimate lesson of Ben Horowitz's remarkable journey is found in a quote from Karl Marx that was actually engraved on his communist grandfather's tombstone: "Life is struggle." That, he believes deeply, is the most important lesson in entrepreneurship and in life. Don't run from the hard things. Don't pretend they don't exist, or that you can avoid them. Embrace your weirdness, your unique background, your gut instincts. Embrace the struggle completely. Because it's only in the struggle that you truly discover who you really are and what you're genuinely capable of building. As we come to the end of our journey through the hard thing about hard things, it's worth pausing for a moment to think about what makes this book so fundamentally different, so genuinely essential. Most business books are like pristine architectural blueprints for a perfect skyscraper. They show you exactly where every beam should go, how every wire should run, assuming you have perfect weather, flawless materials, and unlimited time. Ben Horowitz's book is absolutely not a blueprint. It's a field medic's journal, written in the mud and chaos of an actual battlefield. It's a brutally honest book about what to do after the beautiful blueprint has been torn to shreds, the foundation is cracked wide open, and the storm of a lifetime is bearing down on you with no shelter in sight. That's exactly why its central message is so incredibly powerful. It's not about avoiding hardship or finding some clever hack around difficulty. It's about genuinely embracing it as part of the journey. The idea of the struggle is, to me, the absolute heart of the book. It gives a real name to that feeling every ambitious person knows deep down. That overwhelming feeling of being in over your head, of being crushed by the gap between your inspiring vision and your messy reality. By giving it a name and sharing his own raw experience, Horowitz completely normalizes it. He tells you directly that this terrible feeling isn't a sign that you're failing or that you're not good enough. It's actually a sign that you're trying to do something genuinely meaningful and difficult. For anyone, but especially for someone young and ambitious just starting out, this is an incredibly liberating idea. It fundamentally reframes failure and difficulty not as endpoints or signs to quit, but as absolutely necessary parts of any worthwhile journey. The moments of deepest despair, the moments when you want to quit everything, are often the exact moments of greatest learning and, ultimately, greatest strength. Another genuinely profound lesson is his clear distinction between the peacetime CEO and the wartime CEO. This isn't just a clever metaphor for a book. It's a practical, usable framework for real leadership in different contexts. So much of the advice we constantly get in life is peacetime advice. Be collaborative, be open-minded, empower others, build consensus. And that's legitimately great advice when things are going reasonably well. But Horowitz gives us explicit permission to be fundamentally different when the stakes become existential. In wartime, effective leadership requires a completely different posture. Decisive, intensely focused, even ruthless in service of the core mission. Understanding which season you're actually in, peace or war, is a critical leadership skill, whether you're running a company, leading a school project, managing a team, or just navigating your own complicated life. Finally, the thread of raw, brutal honesty that runs through every page of the book is probably its most enduring quality. The genuine courage to tell it like it actually is, to yourself first, and then to others. The courage to have the incredibly hard conversations that everyone wants to avoid. To make the lonely decisions no one else can make. To face the terrifying truth, even when every fiber of your being wants to look away. This isn't just a clever business tactic, it's a fundamental principle for living a life of real integrity. So what can we actually take away from all this and apply starting today? First, the very next time you have to give someone difficult feedback, try Horowitz's honest approach. Forget the tired old compliment sandwich technique. Be genuinely authentic. Come from a real place of wanting them to actually succeed. Be direct and clear, but not cruel or mean. Frame it as an honest dialogue, not a one-way lecture. You might be genuinely surprised how much more effective and appreciated it is. Second, the very next time you make a significant mistake or face a real setback, practice what Horowitz learned from the Raiders owner Al Davis: nobody cares. This sounds incredibly harsh at first, but it's actually incredibly freeing. Spend exactly 0 time on excuses or feeling sorry for yourself. Devote every single ounce of your energy to what you can actually do right now, today, to move forward. It's a complete mindset shift from victim to active agent. And third, genuinely acknowledge your own struggles instead of hiding them. Get them out of your head where they multiply and distort. Write them down clearly, or talk to a trusted friend or mentor. You don't necessarily need them to have the perfect answer for you. The simple act of sharing the burden, of externalizing the swirling chaos in your mind, is often the crucial first step toward finding real clarity and a path forward. That was a summary of The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. We've journeyed together through the core battles and the hard-won wisdom of this incredible book today. But a summary, no matter how detailed or engaging, is like looking at a photograph of a mountain. The real understanding, the genuine growth, happens when you actually climb it yourself. The book is filled with stories, crucial nuances, and moments of raw emotion that we simply couldn't capture here in this format. If anything we've talked about today sparked something real in you, a recognition of your own struggles, or a genuine hunger for real-world wisdom forged in actual fire, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy and read it yourself. Reading it isn't just passive learning. It's an actual experience, a kind of mentorship in courage and resilience that can genuinely change how you lead and how you live your one life. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable and worth your time, it would honestly mean the world to me if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss our next exploration into another potentially life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Thank you so much for listening. Let's keep growing together.